The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Talking politics with Phil Goff.
Yeah, natural as anything. Phil Goff, leader of the Labour Party.
G'day, Wammo, how are you?
Politics comes natural to you, doesn't it?
It's a way of life. I just had a whole weekend of it, actually. A really flat-out weekend. We got the Chinese New Year and also big day out yesterday. A whole lot of things, actually. The Indian community meeting to discuss the death of Hiran Mohini, the taxi driver. So it was a pretty full-on weekend.
Now, I saw that you attended the big day out, and it's something that you've done quite regularly, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, actually. Go down there, people are enjoying themselves, having a good time,
and
good music.
Well, the Prime Minister's there as well, and I'm sure it is a good time and everything. But the cynical in me always says, it's like the politicians going visiting the homeless people in election year. I don't know. There's something about it when all the politicians converge and there's this feast over a particular area of the community to try and get the votes.
Well, we go to all of the things, as I mentioned to you before, Wammo. Two big Chinese New Year functions. I went to an Indian dance function on Saturday night before one of the Chinese functions. It's your job in politics to get out and around your community. I suppose where the hypocrisy comes is that you turn up at the big day out, and you voted against allowing people to have a civil union, but you turn up there and you expect to get support from them. I suppose that's where the hypocrisy might lie.
He does get the support, though, doesn't he?
I don't think from that community.
They'd love having him there.
Well, he gets the publicity for being there. I think the reception was pretty cool on the ground, actually, as I observed it.
And you didn't try your hand at dancing at all?
No, thank God. Last year I had to do it, and actually I got quite a lot of time for the two drag queens that do that, Buffy and Bimbo. They're great entertainers, really good people, actually. I got to know them quite well. But dancing, I'm pretty happy if I can keep out of the limelight on dancing. I wasn't elected on my dancing ability, I can assure you.
Tell you what, I had a good experience on the weekend, Phil, I want to tell you about. I went to something called a food camp up at Mahirangi College in Warkworth.
Yep.
And it's something that happens yearly on the calendar, and various people get invited, whether they be in the scientific or the technology fields or perhaps the media, just to get around a bunch of tables for the weekend and discuss or share ideas
great.
About the future, about technology, about how lives can be changed, all sorts of things really. And Bill English came along, and he joined us in one of the chats, and he was really receptive and open to finding out solutions to answers, also solutions to questions, should I say, and finding out new ways of looking at things and doing things into the future. And I thought, well, that's, this is really positive. I'm not sure how many places in the world you can go to and have your government representatives actually come and ask you, okay, well, how can we solve this problem? It was really refreshing.
Well, I think that's a good thing about New Zealand. You have far greater access to your politicians, and nobody in politics thinks that they've got all the answers, or if they do, they're not going to be good leaders of New Zealand. You've got to have an open mind. You've got to consider all of the options. You've got to hear what people are saying, and you're wise if you listen not simply to those that are in the civil service that are there professionally to support you, but also to the wider community. There's a lot of good ideas out in the community, and we need to keep an open mind to them.
I got to say, the general mood at Foo Camp was that the speech by John Key last week was missing many details, and perhaps missing the guts and missing the gumption that we really need to solve future problems like future debt for future generations.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big problems for the government was that they did a big, beat up on it. This was going to be, I think they'd labelled it Big Tuesday. We're all sitting there waiting to hear this awesome announcement of the government's ideas for a step change for New Zealand. And the speech fell flat because, it wasn't just that there wasn't the details there. There weren't even the big ideas there. So I think people found that aspect of it incredibly disappointing. The other aspect, of course, was, the tax changes. And what we've really got, what's driving the tax changes, government says they want to cut the tax rates from 38 cents to 30 cents in the dollar. Well, that means for somebody on a Prime Minister's salary, it's about over $500 a week you get extra. That's clear. For somebody on the average wage, 48,000, 49,000, they'll get 35 cents an hour.
Yeah.
Now, nobody thinks that's a fair go. Nobody thinks the guy that's on $400,000 a year actually needs any more spending money. I think if you're getting $4,000 a year, you're doing pretty well. You might have big responsibilities, but the responsibility of government is actually about making sure that everybody shares the benefit of your country, that you're governing the country for the many, not the few. And what made people particularly mad was that John Key had said before the election he wasn't going to raise it, and we dug out the DVD on that, which was a bit embarrassing for them. And then he came into the House and said, well, what I really meant was I wasn't going to raise GST to deal with the deficit. And that kind of took it to an even lower level, and people said, look, why don't you just front up and say you changed your mind? At least that way we'd believe that you changed your mind, not that that you said one thing and then did the opposite afterwards. So I think, the Prime Minister's speech on both of those bases didn't go down well. It wasn't a visionary speech, and the tax changes, people aren't convinced are going to look after all New Zealanders.
And where was the capital gains tax? Where was the emphasis away from property and into investment in New Zealand businesses that can go and export to the world?
Well, that's right. I'd said, actually it was last year at the time of the Labour Party conference, I'd said to the government, look, if you want to look at how you can get a fairer taxation system that actually promotes the productive sector rather than the speculative sector, we'll get alongside you and we'll work with you. We won't make a political football out of it. Well, they rejected that, and they rejected, some of the key things that the Task Force on Tax had recommended in terms of how you make New Zealand a wealthier country rather than how you force the price of houses up so that first-home buyers can scarcely afford them, and that you direct money away from production and into speculation. So it was. I think even the description, a cautious approach to tax reform, would exaggerate it. Nobody thinks that raising GST is going to increase growth in New Zealand or direct funding into the productive sector. It failed on both counts.
Also, one of the messages that I think Bill English might have taken away from his time at Fu Camp was that that the government doesn't allow enough failures. We have this culture in New Zealand where we're not allowed to fail, and so therefore we don't try. We don't get the small investments that small businesses need to actually try, because we're so scared of failing.
Yeah, I think there's something in that. I know that when I was one of the ministers in charge of New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, we had this real dilemma because it was a private board. You're giving money to industries that might make a step change in developing international markets, but you know that if you get it wrong and it fails, you'll be damned for wasting taxpayers' money. But the truth is, if the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise Board wasn't prepared to take risks, and then it wasn't going to make any change, and it wasn't going to produce any chance of really moving forward. So I think you're right. You have to be prepared to have failure in those areas, and to take a chance, to take a risk. It's got to be a calculated risk. What we don't want to see, however, are things that are poorly managed, where you're pouring money down the drain. But taking risks is an important part of being entrepreneurial, is an important part of getting ahead in the world and achieving step change.
Yeah. Phil Goff, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Okay, thanks, Wammo. Talk to you next week.
See ya. Leader of the Labour Party, Phil Goff, talking politics.